Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Aleph. We are going to begin on Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph by the two dots, about 8 lines from the top. The word Gufa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Shmuel. Kol Ratzos Isel Eretz Yisrael. All the lands are considered like dough to Eretz Yisrael. The Eretz Yisrael Isel Bavel. So, as we said, Bavel, because Ezra removed everyone who was puzzle from Bavel, because the Chachmei Yisrael were not going to be there, he was concerned that there was going to be a confusion. So he made Bavel very clean so that there will be no question that everyone there was a kosher. The Psulim could go to Eretz Yisrael, and because we have Chachmei Yisrael there, we'll be able to know the distinction between one and the other. So on this Gemara says, B'mei Rabbi, in the days of Rabbi, Bikshu Lasos Bavel Isel Eretz Yisrael. He wanted to actually do the opposite. He wanted to make Eretz Yisrael with the place with the greatest yichus. On this Rashi says, Isa's Ki'isa Shimu Reves. Dough is mixed up together. Shamati Isa Kepsoilas Anavim Shenischach Mashkel Shalahem. The Isa could also, according to another Pshat Rashi, is referring to like the leftovers of grapes, which are squeezed when you squeeze the liquid, so there's leftover. So again, however you understand the word Isa, but again the point is that one land had greater yichus. So Rabbi wanted to be able to change that. Amrlahem kaitzim masimili bein einai. Thorns you're placing between my eyes. Yetapel imachem. And you want to engage in this activity, says Rashi, Mishum de Rebbe mi mishpachas Bavel haya, because Rebbe was actually from Bavel, mibnei banav shel Hillel, because he was a descendant of Hillel. She'ola, he went to Eretz Yisrael, v'kibel nesiyuso shel bnei Beseira. So he accepted upon himself, again, this level of being a nasi, this nasius. Rabbi Chanina, so he says, Rabbi Chanina bar Chama, says Rashi, Lashivchem davar. So nitbol imahem Rabbi Chanina bar Chama. So he got involved in this. So he was the one who was trying to figure all of this out. Amalahem kach mekublani Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi, Shermi Misham Aviv, who said the name of father, that Kol Ratzos Isel Eretz Yisrael. All the land is going to be, again, there's a mixture compared to Eretz Yisrael, which has better yichus. Eretz Yisrael Isel Bavel. So the reality is, as we said before in the beginning, that Bavel has the greatest yichus. So even though maybe he was trying to support that Eretz Yisrael has the greatest of yichus, upon being metapel in engaging in further investigation, they realize that Bavel has the best. B'yamei Rabbi Pinchas, also Bikshu Lasos Bavel Isel Eretz Yisrael. He wanted to make Eretz Yisrael the strongest in Yichus. Amolhem la'avodav, he said to his servants, Keshani oimer shnei devarim bebeis hamedrash. When I say two things in the beis medrash, teluni ba'arisa, put me in like a stretcher, like some type of a fast-moving wagon. The rutsu, and run. Apparently, that would get him as fast as possible out of there. And Rashi says, "V'hu haya zaken, v'lo haya yachol arutz." He didn't have the ability to run. So Rabbi Pinchas requested, make sure that after I say something, I have to be out of here. But I can't get there out of here fast enough, so I need for you to help me. So Kiyayel Amrulhem, he said, Ein shchitul oiv min ha-Torah. So the first thing he said was something which was just an interesting thought, that there's no din shchita of a bird from the Torah. And Rashi says, V'tam dein shchitul oiv min ha-Torah, Yilaf mivashafach es damo. It says you should spill its blood. B'shvicha ba'alma, which is mashma, any form of spilling, which doesn't really explicitly mention shchita. So adiyasvi v'kama'ayni ba, once they heard this, and they were thinking about it, and they were busy and distracted, he made the statement that Eretz Yisrael is like Isa to Bavel, which again is what we've really been saying up until now, that Bavel has the best yichus, and not here in Eretz Yisrael. So not Luba Risa Baratsu. So they stuck him in a wagon and they started running. And Ratza Acharav, they started running after him. It was a big chase. Vlo Higiuhu. Luckily, they did not reach him. They could not catch up to him. Yoshvu Badku, they sat down and investigated. Ad Shigil Asakana, until there was an element of danger. Says Rashi, Lipsomish Puchai Sanchi Zeraya Shiahargum Pirshum. That once they Pirshu, says Rashi, it says Gemara, Pirshu, they stopped. Once they started doing further investigation, realizing that really some of these people who may come from very chashuva families, really they're psulim, so they realized that they're going to get themselves into some trouble, so they just stopped. It wasn't worth figuring out who's a kush and who's a puzzle if it's going to lead to some danger. Rabbi Yochanan, Heichala biadenu he, says Rashi, Heichala, which is a shvua. Biadenu he, says Rashi, legalus psul mishpachas Eretz Yisrael. We have the ability, we have the knowledge, we have the information to be able to let everyone know who in Eretz Yisrael is apostle. What can we do? Shahari Gedolei Hador Nitmu Ba. Some of the Gedolei Hador are mixed in this whole mess. So Savak Rabbi Yitzchak, the Rabbi Yitzchak Mishpacha, Shenitma Nitma, as we saw at the end of yesterday's daf, which is actually the top of this Amud, says if you have a family that got mixed in already, so we keep it that way. So even though it's true that maybe they're apostle, but if there's no chazaka, people don't know about it, so we're just going to keep it the way it is. We also learned something similar to this, that any family that's already mixed in, that we don't do anything. Rashi says, El Yanichum, we just leave it. Vehim Safek, Vehim Ksherim Lasad Lavai, even though it's a Safek, doesn't make any difference. Mishpachas base Hatzrifa, because when it comes to this name of a family, Haisa Be'ebrah HaYarden, that's where they were located. Verichaka ben Tzion Bizraya. And Ben Tzion, who was a very chashuv a guy, he announced that they were apostle, and he did this with authority. Oda Cheres Haisa, there was another one, Vikerva ben Tzion Bizroa. It says on the side, Vikirvuha b'nei Tzion Bizraya. Gegain Elu Eliyahu ba. On this, Eliyahu came. Will come. Elu diyadim. These are the people that we know of a mishpacha shenitma nitma. The ones that we don't know about, we just keep it that way. Says Rashi, v'heshiv le'vavoy salbanim zemenei banav shel zeh. That's only diyadim, says Rashi. Shakol machzikim oisim b'psulim sheniskarva b'zraya. So when it comes to some people that we already know about, so they're apostle. However, the ones that are mixed up, since we don't know about them, we say that it remains that way. Ta'ana, Oida Cheres Haisa, we learned that there was another family, we did not want to reveal this other family about their status. However, once in 7 years, they would tell their family, their children, their students about this particular situation. Maybe it was twice in 7 years, and that was it. So this way, it at least became known among a small group of people their status. It makes sense only once, is even less often. A person says, I'm a Nazir, imlo agal mishpachais. If I don't reveal these families. So a Nazir, he's a Nazir. Yeah, Nazir. But he's not allowed to, of course, he has to follow what he said. So he can't reveal anything about these families. Rabba, Bar Bar Chana, Rabbi Yochanan, Shem ben Arba Oisios. So he says, the name of Hashem, which is 4 letters, it was given over to our students once in 7 years. There's another thing twice. This is again twice in 7 years. So this is again something else. The way this Rashi says, Kriyaso, Ksivaso, Perusho, Chachamim, Moisonoiso. The way it's written, the way it's said, an explanation, it wasn't said very often. So Hashem's name, which we're very sensitive about not saying or doing too much with Hashem's great name, so it was only taught very infrequently. The fact that it says Zeshmi L'Oilam, so on a play of words, it's L'Alim Ksiv. In other words, without the Vav. Notice it should be hidden. Rava Savar Limid Rishla Bepirka. He wanted to be able to teach about Hashem's name in public. Don't do it. It's supposed to be hidden. Rava Vina Ram Yasastir. Ksiv Zeshmi. This is Hashem's name. Ksiv is Zichri, which means we're not actually supposed to say Hashem's actual name the way it's written, but we say it differently. So Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lo kishani nichtav ani nikra. The way that my name is written is not the way you call me. Nichtav ani b'yud hey. We know that Torah's Hashem's name is written yud, a hey, a vav, and a hey. V'nikra b'alef dalid. But instead we use aleph dalid, of course vav nun yud, which is Hashem's name. So the way that we say Hashem's name is not the way it's written. Okay. And the reason why is because the Psukim specifically tell us this. There's also the very end of a parak in Pesachim. So the fact that it says Zeshmi, this is my name, so it's supposed to be written in a way, but Zichri is the way it's supposed to be actually said. Tanarban. So Tanarban, Rishayna, originally Shem Ben Shteim Esri Oisi Oisai Maisin Oisul Chol Adam. There was Hashem's name, which actually is 12 letters, was given to everyone. Misharabu HaParitzim. However, these Paritzim used to use this name frequently. Hayimaisin Oisel Sinuim. It was only given to the Sinuim Shibakahuna. Says Rashi, Lavarech Bo Ha'am B'Mikdash. That the Kohanim would use this name to bless the nation in the base of Mikdash. So after the carbon Tamashal Shachar, the Kohanim would give a bracha with this name. They would swallow it up b'nimas achehem hakohanim, in the song of the brothers of the Kohanim. It was very interesting that perhaps this is actually a makar why the Kohanim sing Berachas Kohanim. Why do they have to sing it? Why do they have to sing? So some say the reason why they do some singing is in order to be able to allow the tzibur to say other tefillos. Possible. Alternatively, it could be based on this Gemara. The Gemara clearly says that there was Nimas Achem HaKohanim, that the Kohanim sang Berachas Kohanim, and maybe it was because of this original minhag, because they didn't want people to hear them pronouncing Hashem's name. Tanya Omer Bitarfin Pamachas Alisi Achar Achi Imi Laduchan. I once went after my mother's brother, who was a kohen to Duchan. The Teisios Nai Eitzel Kohen Gadol, and I leaned my ears toward the Kohen Gadol V'Shemati Sheavli Hashem Ben Imas Echav Kohanim, that he would do this very thing, as the Kohanim saying, the Kohen Gadol would have this name of Hashem swallowed up so people couldn't actually hear it so well. It says Rashi, Achar Achi Imo Shahaya Kayin, Reb Tarfin Haya Kayin. Reb Tarfin's a Kayin, as the Tosefta Masechtas Ksula says, Masib Reb Tarfin She Kiddush Shalosh Meos Nashim Bishnei B'Tzorais Kedei Lachilim Truma. So it says that he married 300 women in times of famine in order that they should eat Truma. So Truma was only designated for Kohanim. And therefore, Rav Tarfon was a Kohen, and because there was no way for these people to survive because they're starving, so he married them in order that they should be able to teach Truma. A very interesting piece. Okay. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav. Shem ben Arbaim Ushtayim Ma'isiyos. There's a name of Hashem which is 42 letters. Ein Ma'isiyos El Lamisha Senua V'Ana V'Oimid B'Chatzi Yamav. It's got to be only given to someone who's modest, humble, and he's already finished basically half of his life, which usually means at 35, assuming the death of a person is Yemeshin of saying is Shivim Shana, which hopefully that's not necessarily the case, but nonetheless, maybe it's referring to once you're 35. Ve'enu koyes, he doesn't get angry. Ve'enu mishtaker, he doesn't get drunk. Ve'enu maimid al midaisav, he doesn't, he's not holding on his anger and his midos. The whole hazahir boy, anyone who's careful, v'hamishamartai b'tahara, and he guards it with purity. Fear will be placed on the people, namely so this excludes a lot of people. But nonetheless, someone who has this great name of Hashem, which some people say before l'chadoidi, the anabekaya kedushin mincha, which is said quietly. If you would notice, it actually has 42 words, which some say the first letter of each word corresponds to this 42 name of Hashem. And then immediately afterwards we say Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchus Olam Voed. Probably, again, because we say Hashem's name, that's how we would respond. Okay. Omer Shmuel Mishmei Desab. So Shmuel said, now, Bavel b'cheskas ksherim edes. When we deal with Bavel, we just assume that everyone there is a kosher. Unless you somehow are able to find out this guy's apostle. But if you don't know, we'll just assume everyone there is kosher. On the other hand, Shar Ratzos b'cheskas psul hein oimdois ad shividocha b'ma niskashra. When it comes to all other lands, it's the opposite. Whatever is the chazaka is that you're apostle, and if somehow we find out that you're a kosher, okay, you're a kosher. But the assumption, the status quo is you're apostle. Eretz Yisrael, muksak apostle, muksak kosher, kosher. Now this is a little bit difficult to understand. Eretz Yisrael, which is kind of like in between the level of yichus, if you will, between Bavel and Shar HaRatzos, what does this mean? Because Haguf Kasha. It's an apparent contradiction. Amrin Muxal Psul Psul. If the guy we know is apostle, only that is apostle, which is Mashma Hastam Kosher. V'Hagatan Muxal Kosher Kosher Hastam Apostle. So what is the middle ground here? So Rav Huna Bar Tachlifa Mishmei de Rabul Kasha. It's actually not a question at all. It's not an issue. As we continue to Ein Aleph Amud Beis. Kan l'hasiyoi isha kan l'hoitzi isha miyadai. One is for marrying. So to marry a girl, stam, we need to be boidik to check this person's status. However, l'hoitzi mimena isha, to release her, shenas kvar, you're already married, mistamo uloi mafkinan. So if we don't know the status, we're not going to remove her from this situation. So that's the difference. So let's look at question 12 from the previous Amud. Elu beis devarim huskru b'gemara shechachamim hayu mastirim oisa ve'in megalnu levneihem v'talmidim el pam b'shvua. So what is this thing that we only tell only specific people? So one is mishpachais shel psul, and also the shem shel dalid oisios. This was question 12. So again, question 12, as we just saw on Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph, that let's get this down. Oida cheres haisa v'loratza chamim legaloisa of chachamim ma'isa noisa levnehim l'talmidehim pamachas meshua. That was one instance. And also, as we said, the Shem ben Arba Oisiyos Chachamim Ma'isa Noisa L'Talmidim Pamachas Meshua. So those are the two things that we are extremely careful not to tell a lot of people about. Okay, let's see if there's another question here. Yeah, exactly the same question as TB8. Elu Beis Devarim Husker B'Gemar Shechamim Hayu Mastirin Oto, etc. So I wrote Yuchsin Livnei Mishpacha V'Iro. Okay, Hashem Hamafor Shel Hashem Shakohanim Mavliim B'Neima B'Berchas Kohanim. Okay, that certainly is the correct answer. TB8. Exactly the same question, which sometimes we get that a lot. The questions are identical. Okay. I guess there's only so many questions you could ask. Rabbi Yosef. Kol shestichasai bebavel, anyone who is engaged in conversation, masin lo isha, can marry, says Rashi. Shemasaper b'lashon anshi bavel. If you speak in their language, masin lo isha, it's pretty clear you must come from Bavel. That's how you speak, right? If you have a Babylonian accent, it shows that you're from Bavel, even if you may not be there at this moment. So that itself is a proof that you're from Bavel, and therefore you can marry someone. However, there's tricksters, right? People will learn the Sichas Bavel just to act like they have good yichus, so that may not be enough of a proof. Ze'ira havika Mishtamit midid Rabbi Yochanan. So Rav Zera was avoiding being in the presence of Rabbi Yochanan. Davi oimerle nitzev barti, because Rabbi Yochanan used to always advise, "Why don't you marry my daughter?" But he didn't want to marry his daughter. Zeiri was not interested in marrying Rabbi Yochanan's daughter, and the reason Rashi says, "Menishihim Eretz Yisrael, v'hu hayim Bavel." He didn't want to marry her because of the yichus. Can you imagine? This is Rabbi Yochanan, one of the greatest people that we ever learn about in Gemara. Guy didn't want to marry his daughter. Not good yichus because you're from Eretz Yisrael. Yom echad havi ka'azi b'orcha. They're on the road. Motu l'orkama demaya. They were passing a pond. So Arkimu Rabbi Yochanan ksafe. V'kama avrele. So Zeiri didn't want the great Rabbi Yochanan to be injured or wet, so he put him on his shoulders. Understand, my Torah is kosher to you, that you show me such respect, but yet, how about my daughter? Why don't you want to marry my daughter? So my daitach, what's on your mind? Kohani Levi, atu what? Kohani Levi of Yisrael, kulu saliku. You think they all went to Eretz Yisrael? No. Kihechi dishtayir mahani, nishtayir nami mahani. So the Psulim stayed in Bavel too. So what are you thinking? That Bavel is such a great place, and you only want to marry a girl from Bavel? There's Psulim in Bavel too. So the truth is, Ishtamite hadiyamar belezer. He overlooked or did not know the statement of Rabbi Lezer, as we said before, that lo ola Ezra mebavel ad shiasik soilus nekiya of Ola. In other words, since he made Bavel a soilus nekiya, there were no psulim there. So therefore, Zira is right, and Rabbi Yochanan was incorrect. Ula ikla pumbedisa lebe Rabbi Yehuda. So Ula went to Pumbedisa, to the base medrash Rabbi Yehuda. Chazi Rabbi Yitzchak b'reid Rabbi Yehuda the Gadol Notzav. He noticed that there was this guy there, and he was not married. And it was surprising. Why didn't he get married yet? So my timer. Why aren't you married? Mansiv le mar isasil bere. Why don't you marry someone off to your son? Or how can I have my son get married? I don't know who he should marry, because everyone maybe has good yichus. How do I know who is an Isha miyuchesas? Or Malay said, Atu what? Anan miyadin and mehecha kasinan. You think you're so great? How do we know where you come from? Dilmi mahanach dechsiv. Maybe you come from the people from this pasuk. Noshim b'tzion ina b'sulos bar Yehuda. That we afflicted the captured women, the b'sulos bar Yehuda. So maybe we come from there. Okay, so even if she was killed in captivity and she has a child, the child will still be a kosher. Okay, fine. So you're not necessarily from the product of a captive woman, because even though it's obviously not good yichus, but at least you'd be a kosher. Maybe you come from that in Amos. Hashaychvin al mitos shein, those who sleep on ivory beds. Usruchim al aroisosum, that there's spoilage on their beds. Yom Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina el b'nei Adam hamashtinin mayim emnei mitosehem arumim. These are the people that urinate by their beds while they're naked. Umegadif ba Rav Avoy. On this, Rav Avo had difficulty with that interpretation. Said, those people should be the first people to be exiled. They're so terrible. What? Mishum demashtin mayim mipnei mitoisem arumim yigol b'rosh goyim. Why is it? Okay, maybe they don't have the best manners, but why would that be a reason that they should be exiled among the first people to be exiled? Why is this the worst in the world? Obviously, that's not all they did. They eat, drink together. They put their beds near each other. And they switch their wives. This married man takes this married wife back and forth. And there's literally stains of shechva zera all over. And therefore, what does that mean? That they could be having children who through Eishes Ish, which means the children is a suffix mamzer. So maybe you come from them. So why are you so strict not to find a wife for your son because of yichus? Who says you're so great? So so hechi nevid. So what should I do? So zil baser shetikusa. You should go after silence. Kiha debanki b'nei marava. They would examine. Ki minsu beitrei b'hadi adadi. We have two people that quarreled. Chazu haiminayu dekad v'shasik. You see who's the person who was silent first. Amri haim yuchas tvei. This person must have the best yichus. Amarav shdikuse de bavel hainu yichusa. Actually, that's what we say in Bavel. The silence is their yichus. So silent people are best, since they're also comfortable and self-confident in themselves, and they have nothing really to cover up. They have nothing to prove, and therefore it's okay if they don't have to be the loudest ones, which is very interesting. It shows you the one who screams the most in an argument is often the one who's wrong, because they don't really have substance in their argument, but rather they have to speak loudly and interrupt and not let other people speak, which unfortunately we see a lot of times now in colleges, that you have a speaker, you may not like the speaker, but what happens now is they sit in the back and they start screaming, not allowing the speaker to express themselves, which is a terrible thing, because the fact that they're screaming, it shows that they have a problem, because they're unwilling to accept the possibility of another opinion. And the fact is, if you're silent, that shows that you really have good yichus. It shows there's something good about you, because you will allow another person to speak, and you don't always have to speak up. So that's part of the idea of yichus. Eini v'ha ikla Rav. Rav went to Badek Bahu and he examined. My love b'yachsusa, that he checked their yichus. Lo bishti kusa. Hakakarmalhu. Bedoku, go and check ishaski ilo shaski. Are they people that are quiet or not? Amar Yehuda Marav. Imor isa shnei b'nei adam. Shemis garim zebazeh if you have two people that you see that they are constantly battling with one another, so shemetz psul yesh be'echad mehem. There's obviously a problem with one of them. And we do not leave them until basically we're able to be boidik one of them. In other words, it's going to be clear that probably there's something wrong with them. So if you're someone that's constantly engaged in machlokas and fighting, that in itself is an issue. Or maybe Shuman Levi. Zubazu. If you have two families that fight with each other, the Hatfields and McCoys, shemetz psul yesh machas mehem. There's obviously something wrong with one of them. So again, it's clear with further investigation that you'll see that there's something wrong with one of them. Amra Papa, Saba Mishmei de Rav, Bavel Bria. Bavel is considered to be like a healthy physical person in regard to great levels of yichus. Meishon is Mesa. It's like dead. Madai Choyla. Choyla is not as bad because Mesa is like they're all mamzerim. Chola means they're sick, but the majority of them are kosher. There's a little bit of psul, just like someone who's sick, that the majority of them are going to live. So you're sick now, but you'll get better. So the majority of these people are okay. Elam goiseses. Elam is the opposite. The majority of them are psul. There's a miyat of ksherim. So ma bein choylun l'goisesin, as we already saw in Rashi, roiv choylun l'chaim, roiv goises l'misa. Ad heichin hi bavel. So since it's important for us to be able to understand exactly how Bavel has great yichus, so we want to know its boundaries. So Rav Omer ad Nahar Azok. It goes until this place called Har Nazak. Shmuel Omer ad Nahar Yoani. So these are different rivers. Rashi says, Shebavel ben Shnei Naharos Gedolim. Bavel, modern day Iraq, is in between two large rivers, Chidekel Upras, which is referring to the Euphrates and the Tigris. Zem in a Mizrach, Zem in a Marav. Then one is from the east, one's in the west. V'soifel shel Pras, Shoifech Bechidekel, and the end of the Euphrates pours into the Tigris. Okay. And we can see the rest of this Rashi. Back in the Gemara. Le'el bediglas. So on the top of the Diglas, on the top or in the south, ad hecha, Rav Omer ad Bagda, maybe that's referring to Baghdad, va'anva, u'shmuel Omer ad Mushkene. V'lo Mushkene b'chlal. However, that city is not included. I remember Rabbi Omer Shmuel Mushkene harihi kigoyel yochsin el ad Mushkene u'Mushkene b'chlal. Actually, I was wrong. We do include that as part of Bavel. Okay. Latachtis, which is the north, Bediglas, the north of the Diglas, ad hecha, until where? So Rav Shmuel ad apaima tata. So until this bottom apama, tarte apamya havian. There was actually two, chada ilita v'chada tatasa. One above the other, one on the top, one on the bottom. Chada ksher v'chada b'sul. One's good, one's not. Uvein chada l'chada parsa. In between these two locations, there's just a parsa in difference. The kokapti hadadi. They were so strict, they didn't like each other apparently. They feel nuraloi moishle hadadi. They wouldn't even spare a match, no fire. V'simanech de pisulta. The simon is that was puzzle. Hadimishtaya Meishanis, speaks the language of Meishan. So Meishan, which we already said, is like death. Very bad yichus. So therefore, if they spoke that language, and you're not going to be choshesh of Ramoyim to sound bad, right? So that was proof that was not good. That they don't have good yichus. Le'el bepras, to the above the Euphrates, which is the west of Bavel, ad Hecha, Rav Omer ad Akra ditul bakne, Shmuel Omer ad Gishra de Bepras. There was apparently some bridge by the Euphrates. Rav Yochanan Omer ad Maveris de Gizmo, until this particular crossing. Lion Abaya, he would curse. V'eteim Rav Yosef ad Rav. He would curse Rav, who made the statement that it's only until Akra de Tul Bakne. So, ad Rav, Liat, 1 second, why would he curse Rav? Ad Shmuel, Liat, why would he curse Shmuel? Because Shmuel said that it's ad Gisher de Bepras. Right? So, why would he not curse them? Because, V'hari hu Moisef. Says Rashi, Liat, kol shesamach al zeh, shein yechusa shel bavel, Moshach Kolkach. It didn't go that far. So Shmuel's boundaries is even larger. So why is he cursing Rav and not Shmuel? So Elolai other Rav Koshkin and Shmuel. That's okay, I'll curse both of them. Certainly Shmuel, because his distance was even further away. So he made the boundaries of Bavel more than they should be. Because when we're dealing with this bridge, which seems like it's pretty far away, de tatoi havikoi. Actually, it's lower, which basically is saying that it was not including as much as originally we may have thought. Okay, va'inna nowadays, as we continue Ein Beis Amud Aleph, hu dal yuha parsoi. The Parsim moved it up later on. Armalei Abayil, Rabbi Yosef, Lahagisa the Pras, this side of the Euphrates ad Hecha. Armalei, my daitach. Why do you want to know? Mishum birum miyachse de pomadisa mibirum natsvei. So this place, even the people who have the greatest of yichus and pomadisa, from this place they would marry. Says Rashi. Mishum birum shema birum she'yosheves b'hakisa miboilach. If that's what you're asking, don't ask. Shehi ben shtei hanaros mibirum nasi shmam nuch zakim heim ba b'cheskis yichus. Clearly, it had good yichus because people would marry from there. Question. I'm going to stop there. Question 13. Omer Shmuel Mishmei de Saba Eretz Yisrael Muchsak Psul Psul Muchsak Kosher Kosher Mahadin L'Shitasa B'Stamad Muchsak Kosher Psul. So he said it depends. One is Laseh Isha, to marry a woman, as we said, that you do need to be boidik. However, once she's already married, so then we're not going to say she has to be removed from that marriage. Question 14. Mahu Hasimin. What was the sign? Shenoster b'gemara l'das ezu mishpachim yuchesas he. How do we see who has the greatest levels of yichus? So as we said, it's mishpacha sheskanis, a family or a person who embraces silence. Silence is golden. Question 9. Madula maskanu chashmul mishon mishum avdos, which I don't think we did that. Okay, hopefully we'll see it on tomorrow's daf. And TB9, Madula lo rotzer Rav Zera lotzeis as bas Rav Yochanan. Why didn't he want to marry Rav Yochanan's daughter? After all, it's Rav Yochanan's daughter. So this is what I wrote. Hu chayshish beyichash Rav Yochanan shehu lo toiv achrei Ezra asa bavel kipsoyos nikia of anachnu oimrim sheish harbe artso shkivan shenitma nitmo. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but the point is that why he did not want to marry her is because he was from Eretz Yisrael. He was from Bavel. Rav Yochanan was from Eretz Yisrael, and he felt that the yichus was obviously not there. Adkan.